How we doing, friends? My name is Jesse, and you found my channel, and that's actually really cool. Or maybe you've been here already and the journey just continues. But welcome. Today, you guys saw the title. I have a little note off here to the side, but today I want to talk about the real cost of being tough all the time. As a man, that's very easy to do, and we often are raised, given an example of that, right? To be tough all the time and don't show any weakness, no kinks in the armor, and everything's always fine all the time until it's not. But the reality is, it actually isn't, and we act like it is. But friends, in this video, I'm going to break it down into 3 parts. I want to talk first about the myths of being tough. And then I want to talk about the actual hidden costs that I've actually experienced in my own life and those pain points that I often refer to. And then lastly, I'm going to kind of close this video off by redefining what I see as strength now. And we'll close it off with that. But friends, the myths of being tough, right? We were told as men to be tough all the time. Like I said, it's an example given to us by our parents. I mean, my father stereotypically is that man. He's never cried. He's never told me that he loves me, even though I've said it to him. In any capacity when it comes to emotions, they just don't have it. And then naturally, by default, as they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And I picked up a lot of those bad habits, and that was my role model. So obviously I mirrored a lot of what he did. And, those myths, I believed them. I thought a man did have to be tough all the time. I thought men don't cry, because to cry it is being weak, right? Cowardly, not strong, right? And when you cry, when you show weakness, when you aren't tough, how are you going to make it in this life? How are you going to accomplish your goals? How are you going to be ambitious? You have to, in a way, be ruthless, cutthroat, achieve what you want to achieve, no matter how it is that you feel in the process of achieving it, right? Those are some of the myths, right? Another one is always be in control. I have an issue with that. And unfortunately, as we'll talk about in the costs, that's one that will come and bite you later on, when you always want to be in control, right? And you don't want to give that up in any capacity in your life, right? Another one is like brushing things off, never asking for help, right? Laughing, joking around instead of admitting pain. We could talk about that one. When it comes to anything with pain, we just laugh it off. And you joke around, right? With my friends growing up, we don't admit to anything. We just laugh it off. But as we laugh, there's pain behind that smile, right? And then this other piece of never asking for help, that one's come and really bitten me before, right? And it continues to, but it's this idea that men, we don't ask for help, right? And that's also why we don't absorb content like this, right? Being vulnerable, right? To ask for help is you first needing to be vulnerable, right? To actually realize that I can't do this on my own, right? So never asking for help is an easy one. I think we all can agree on is what we do oftentimes. We just push through and don't ask for help, right? So those are some of the myths. Now I want to move on to the hidden costs, right? Because these are tricky. I'm 30 years old. I just turned 30 this year. I've been in therapy for 2 years. It'll be 2 years in October. Can't give myself a month of extra credit here, but almost 2. And I slowly have just began to dismantle. And I've realized a lot of the issues I end up facing in my life that come to me, those pain points that happen, that is the cost. That's the cost of being this way, right? Of following those myths, right, as truths. Not showing weakness, never asking for help, always wanting to be in control. Just those things alone, right? Those will come and bite you in the ass when you want to actually have a relationship. And in this case, this example, I'll speak of my own with a woman, right? I continued to go down my path. I attracted a woman on that path, and eventually things didn't go well. Eventually the attraction wasn't there for her in an emotional capacity. And when it comes to women, friends, if you haven't realized it yet, maybe for you, you continue to only see it in the way that, why does she act this way? You know, I'm always right. Why does she keep nagging me for this? You have to understand that there's a difference of how you view relationships and how they view it, right? Just to be blunt, right? Women don't look for the same thing oftentimes that we look for in a relationship. But that doesn't mean we're not on the same team. So to be on the same team, you have to then care for the things that she cares about. She has to also care for the things that you care about. If for you it's physical, fine, work on that. And if for her it's emotional, work on that, right? It's mutual. But right now, because we're speaking to each other, the emotional component of a relationship is going to be one you'll always struggle with. That to me has been the greatest cost, because I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be alone. So the relationship with women, my partner specifically, that was one of the biggest costs that I almost lost. I almost had to pay that due, but I had to work on it. I have a partner who is patient with me, and eventually I found myself in therapy, and I began to really work on those things that I was struggling with, that I was raised to see by my role model, to take as truths, and I began to chip away. So a cost, friends, is you'll always find yourself without a relationship with a woman. Or if you are in a relationship with a woman, you will settle for a level of unhappiness that you feel that happiness that you're seeking isn't possible, but it is. And you have some work you have to do to achieve that, because that emotional component that she needs filled, you have to fill it. And if you don't know where to begin, that's what this channel is going to be about over time. But the cost is going to be a female relationship, just to be blunt. And a relationship now with yourself is also another cost. And this is the tricky one, friends, because you have to be careful here. Can you imagine living your life and never actually knowing who it is that you are? Feeling a certain way, realizing that you're uncomfortable, you don't feel well, and then you don't know why, right? That's a cost. Can you imagine getting to the age of 70 and barely realizing this is what I like, these are my needs, I want these needs filled, and then you actually wait that long to actually realize who it is that you are and what you deserve? The relationship with yourself is very important. I would say it's most important. Obviously, the relationship with a woman is very important for companionship, but you are your greatest companion. So the costs, friends, are going to continue to be in relationships, one with women, and almost most importantly, I'd say the one with yourself, because you can't continue to lie to yourself and experience inner peace. It's not possible. There's a disconnect there. You're believing something in an alternative reality than the one in which you're currently living. And that's why you don't feel good, right? That's why you turn to vices. So it can almost in a way cost you then your life, right? If you really want to get dramatic with this, right? You begin to drink, you let yourself go, you overeat, you consume a lot of fast food, greasy foods, you gain weight, right? I'm a nurse, get cardiac, vascular disease, right? Get a heart attack, however it is you want to shape this. It's very important to identify that there's hidden costs to continuing to neglect your own emotions and never connecting to yourself, right? But it's what you've been used to. You've been used to everybody never really acknowledging that you feel anything. So you continue to treat yourself the same way. And that's not conducive to a healthy outcome in this life, friends. For me, one of the things I strive for is inner peace. That's very important to me, but it takes a lot of work. And what I used to think was actually inner peace, it really wasn't. I had to work so much harder to actually achieve inner peace. And then I realized, even as I feel like I've achieved it, there's more layers to it. And I'm starting to realize now that it's a lifelong journey. That like just because you wake up one day and you have it, the next day you expect to have it, no. Every single day you have to choose this. And especially if you're like me, as a man, you've been so used to being emotionally neglected and so disconnected from your feelings, right? It's gonna take a lot of time to repair, to reconnect to those feelings, and then also be your greatest support, okay, to experience that inner peace. And those are the three biggest ones I have. You know, burnout was there, health problems, never really knowing yourself, right? Those are personal costs. Relationship costs, you know, I care about wanting a woman in my life. That's the thing that's gonna cost you. And then the other one is emotional. And I kind of mentioned this, but I didn't. And this one's important to acknowledge. A lot of us are numb. A lot of us experience anxiety. A lot of us experience eventual depression, and even deeper than that, right? Suicidal ideations, right? We just don't feel good, right? We're just so disconnected from ourselves, and a lot of bottled up stress, right? We just bear it because we're so used to it. That's also a cost, and it's an emotional one. But you have to realize, friends, just as I did, that being tough was actually making me, in many ways, a weaker man, because I was getting taken out by emotions. The one thing I felt like I was stronger than, I was actually getting taken out by them because of the costs. It was costing me health problems. It was costing me my inner peace. It was costing me the relationship with myself. And how you live inwardly, friends, is going to reflect outwardly, is one thing that comes to mind for me, right? But it's tricky because some people can have it all on the outside and then still be very much in pain in the inside. And we just do a really good job at masking it. But one day has to come, friends, and I hope it's through this channel. I hope it's through my messages. One day has to happen. And that day is going to be you realizing you can't continue to live this way, that you want to do better, that you realize something's actually calling you up and pushing you to be more than a man, right? Not just a man you grew up thinking that's what a man is. And that's when I realized that the strength, right? And this is where we're going to get to the last segment of redefining strength. To me, I actually feel, looking at all of this, it takes much more strength as a man to actually feel feelings, because it's the one thing you continue to avoid. And in that avoidance, you think you're better than the feelings. You think you're actually stronger than the feelings, but you're suppressing, right? And once you suppress, it's going to persist, and it's going to eventually just come up because you're resisting too much, right? Feelings, friends, we just haven't developed the muscle, right? The tolerance to hold that space. So it just feels very overwhelming. But can you imagine, just as you've built this outward life, right? This outward image of yourself, right? Everything looks good. You got the career, you got the house, right? You make the money, you get the car you want. Externally, maybe you go to the gym, everything looks good, right? Everything looks nice and neat. But you don't have that inner peace. You don't have those emotional strengths, right? To hold feelings, feel your feelings. You're lacking in this area. And that lack in that area is creating all these other problems for you. Just imagine if you had everything you have and you work on the peace to then have that inner peace, that emotional strength, that is then going to repair all those other things that are actually going wrong in your life, right? Like your partner who you feel is just nagging you, right? That disconnection from yourself, right? A lot of people look at vices and they just try to turn a switch off. Why is it that you go to vices? What is the drive behind it? And oftentimes you're going to see it's pain. And then why is there pain? Where did it come from? Where did it come from, right? Look at those things. That's the core, that's the root. And if you can address the root, just imagine how much stronger you can be. Oftentimes we just get taken out by emotions. I am not good at crying. I feel very weak. I don't like the feeling, right? But actually, a good cry is actually very important. And especially when you've been bottling some stuff up for years. At the same time, like admitting when you're struggling, being vulnerable, right? Saying it out loud to yourself maybe at first, and then saying it to someone else, right? So they can be a witness. And you gain strength in that. It actually brings your partner closer to you, as long as they're a healthy partner to you. Let someone in instead of shutting them out. It's that same deal. And then giving yourself permission to feel, friends. That's another shift. It's important. Maybe you can't get yourself to cry quite yet, and that's okay. No pressure. But give yourself permission to feel. If your boss pissed you off, don't just brush it under the rug and be like, whatever. Feel the anger. And then as you feel the anger, maybe there's a layer in there that really hurt you, right? Like the boss just really discredited you, right? Your opinion disrespected you, right? Made you feel less worthy, right? Whatever the feelings are, feel them. The one thing my therapist has said, and I remember is, constantly I remind myself of this, is that the feelings are always there. They're always there. You can act like they don't impact you, like they don't hit, right? You can act like they don't exist, right? Like they're not taking any energy from you, but they're there. It's almost better to acknowledge that they're there, feel whatever energy they have to give, and then you'll see, you'll actually move lighter. It'll be a lighter day for you. You'll move about lighter. And the earlier you can do this in your life, right, is dive into this pain. The earlier you do this into your life, the less you have to worry about accumulation, right? For me, I waited until the age of 28 to go to therapy. I have 28 years to sift through, right? And I'm sifting through it, and it's painful and it's hard. And I'm glad I did at 28, because I can only imagine when I'm 38, when I'm 48, when I'm 50. And then as you get older, you say, whatever, what's the point? There's always a point, because you're going to continue to put more and more and more weight on you. And it's pain. And you're going to go into your myths, right, that you think are truths. You're never going to cry, never going to admit to, any of that pain. Never going to lose control, never going to be vulnerable, never going to cry. You're just going to harden, turn to concrete, right? And then how are you going to get to that part of you that actually needs to be acknowledged when the door to get to it is like 15 feet of concrete? It's going to be way harder to access. Friends, being tough all the time will cost you everything. But being strong enough to feel, that's what brings actual resilience and true strength. You got this, friends. You guys aren't alone. And I'm just like you.